Hello everyone, welcome to Code and Learn. I'm a huge fan of testing, so before proceeding further, I would love to improve our testing setup. So in testing, we make a lot of assertions on what we are getting back from the function. So essentially what we are doing here is black box testing. That is, we are giving an input to our function and then expecting something as an output and finally making assertions on that output. Now to make assertions, here we are doing comparisons. This is fine for this case, but if we want to compare the return news, we would have to go through each field and compare it one by one. This can get cumbersome. This is where Testify comes into place. Testify provides a bunch of packages that you can use to make your assertions and also use as a testing setup package. So you have assertion made with the assert package. As you can see here, we can just do assert.equal expectation and what we expect and a message if you want to print a message when the assertion fails. Similar to assert, we have the require package. The difference between require and assert is that with assertion made with assert package, if the assertion fails, that is, these two are not equal, code will move to the next line of execution. But with require, if the assertion fails, the whole test will fail and exit right there. It also provides mock package along with the testing suite, but I don't use them a lot in my code because the inbuilt testing setup provided by Go is good enough for my use cases. But if you want to explore them, you can have a look at the package documentation. Now to install the package or to install Testify into our project, we are just going to run this command in our terminal. So here I can just do go get fetcher testify. That should add Testify to our project. Now as an example, I will update the model test, that is the test we wrote for the validate method on the news post request body. So let's do that. Instead of using a bool for expected error, we are going to use a string because what I want to do here is compare the error message to see if we are returning an error. Otherwise, just expecting that we are getting an error won't reliably test for error cases, because what if we are expecting a error for when author is empty, but instead we get an error when title is empty. So there is no way in our test to make sure that the returned error has error for title is empty. Here we can update it to say author is empty. Similarly for title we have title is empty, then summary is empty. For time invalid, we are getting error from the parse function in the time package. We will have a look at that later, but for now we can just do an empty string or maybe just say error. Similar to this, we can just say error tags empty. We have tags cannot be empty. This is a success case. In this case we don't want any errors, so I'm going to leave it as a 0 value, which is an empty string in here. Instead of making assertion like this, we can use the assert package from Testify. So I can do if tc.expectedError is not is equal to empty string, we expect an error. So I can do assert.error t.error. Let's remove this part. So what essentially we are saying is that the expected error should not be null. Otherwise, we can say assert no error. That is, when we don't expect an error, we assert that there is no error actually. So another assertion I want to make is to assert on the error text. For that, I can use contains t error.error method, which returns a error string, should contain tc.expectedError string. So Go is complaining here because we haven't imported the assert package. Instead, what we did was get the testify package. To correct this, I'm just going to clear the console, go mod tidy. That should fix our issue. Now let's run the test case to see how that performs. As you see, all other error cases passed, but where we got the error was when time was invalid and source was invalid, because we used the error string, but the error is coming from the time and the URL package. So instead of doing this, we can just copy paste this for invalid time. Let's see if that works. Since it has quotes, I'm just going to use a raw string. Let's save it, try again. Okay, failed. So we just need to remove this because they are being escaped. Run again. Here, what we are seeing is error tags cannot be empty does not contain error. So instead of parsing of URL failing, we are getting tags not empty. So this part is passing. So I think what's happening here is a URL or empty URL does not return an error. So along with doing this, we can also do if n.source is equal to empty string, let's return an error like we do for summary and other pieces. I will just copy paste it and say source is empty n.source. Now let's try again to run our test cases. So as you can see, source is empty. We are returning an error. That means we need to update the error string here and say source is empty, and this should pass. As you can see, the test passed. So by using assert from Testify, we were able to assert on the error and the contain string. Now when there is no error, we want to also assert on the store new that is returned from validate. For this, I'm going to update our expectations. So I am going to declare a new type expectations struct. Inside it, we can say error, which is a string, and news, which is the expected news, that is store.news. Here, instead of expected error, we can do expectations of type expectations. We're going to update this error is equal to author not empty. Remove this. Similar for the other ones. Expectation, error, expectations, error, summary not empty, then expectations, error, string should be parse time invalid. Same for source invalid. So expectation, error, source is empty, then tags is empty, and no error in this case. Now we also need to update our assertion to say tc expectation.error. Similar here. Okay, let's try again, see if it works. Okay, it's working as expected. Now for the validate case, or when we are successfully validating the news and converting the news post request body to store news, we want to assert on the return news. So we can use assert equal t expected, that is tc expectation dot news, and the news we get from validate news. For that, we also need to specify the expectation or the expected news. News store.news. We are using author is equal to test.author, title test title, summary. I can just copy these bits to make it easier. Now created on this side is a time.time type. So we need to parse this into a time. Let's do that. Time.parse. It returns error. Instead of doing this, what we can do is when we start making the assertion, we can set the time here. So I can do created or tc.expectation.news.created add is equal to the parse time. So let's parse the time. Parse time error tc.request.created add. Need to parse that. Parse or time.parse tc.request.created add. Now we will use required to set that there is no error. Instead of shadowing, I can just say parse error. The format we use for parsing is 3339, so we can just provide that as the first string. Okay, and then now let's use the required package from Testify. In this case, I don't want parsing to fail, so I will say require no error t parse error, and then tc.created@. You can just move this up, and then tc.created@ is equal to parse time. Let's rename it to parsed time. Similarly, we can do a similar thing for source. So I can do parsed source error url dot parse tc.request dot source, and then require no error with parsing. Let's move this up and then say tc.expectation.news.url or source parsed source. That's it. Let's try our test again, and as you can see, it's working as expected. So that means both our error and successful case assertion worked as expected. Now if you see, we also want the content to be not empty. So let's add that test. I will add it here. N.content is equal to empty string. We say errors is equal to errors dot join errors fmt error f, say content is empty, and then n.content. Let's add a test for that. Let's do it after title. So here let's copy it, or copy this one. Content empty, no content, content is empty. Keep in mind, in our valid case, we would also need to add the content. So we can say content test content. Similarly, asserting on the news, we will add the content. Just content, save it. Let's try our test again. Run test. Okay, it's failing. Let's have a look at the error. So we expected test content, but we got nothing. The minus sign is for what we expected and the positive sign is for what we got. What's happening here is when we return the content or the news store body, we are not setting the content. So here we can do content is equal to news.content. Try our test again. That should pass. So as you saw, we were able to make our test cases more robust or testing more robust with more robust asserting. So from now on, whenever we write test, we will use the assert and the require package from Testify to make the assertions. That's it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please post a comment under the video or reach out to our Discord server. Until next time, happy coding.